Let's talk more about Boris Johnson. We've got that Partygate inquiry by the Privileges Committee in the House of Commons. 7 members, 4 of them are Tories, I think 2 Labour, 1 SNP. Boris Johnson, is going to publish a dossier today, a 50-page dossier of his own, defending himself, in which he is going to call this inquiry into whether or not he deliberately misled Parliament and is in contempt of Parliament. He's going to call it unlawful and biased. That's ahead of giving evidence a 4-hour session on Wednesday afternoon. Let's talk about this with Henry Hill. He's Deputy Editor of Conservative Home, the website for grassroots Tory members. Good morning to you, Henry.
Good morning.
I mean, this is properly box office stuff. We thought this story was going away. It absolutely isn't going away at all, is it? Boris Johnson coming out fighting. He's taken a whole team of lawyers' advice. He's also apparently going to publish a whole load of WhatsApps between him and civil servants and others about the advice he was given about what he had to say to Parliament, when he repeatedly denied not only there had been any parties and his horror that there had been any parties, and then saying he wasn't at the parties, and then saying that, yes, he had been at the parties, but of course, they were all in line with the COVID rules at the time. I would say what he's got to say is abject nonsense. What do you make of it?
I mean, yeah, if he has bombshell evidence that's going to completely exonerate him, he's waited an awfully long time to bring it up, right? Because theoretically, if he'd had it, he might still be Prime Minister. It's kind of indicative of the way that Boris has handled this throughout, really. Instead of getting ahead of the story and just apologising and holding his hands up. And he's Boris. He's got away with that before. He probably would have got away with it again. He continually offered some kind of denial that would then be refuted by new evidence, and then he'd have to go out and offer another denial, and it kept it the story on the front pages for weeks on end when he was Prime Minister. So absolutely, I think basically what he's trying to do here is he is trying to discredit and delegitimize the process of the investigation for the sake of his supporters. I don't think it's going to sway the majority in the House of Commons.
I just still remember the just absolutely ridiculous comments from Boris Johnson after that video first emerged in early December 21 of the Downing Street officials, including Alex Stratton, who later resigned, joking about the staff party the night before, at the peak of lockdown in December 2020, and which he said he had been shocked by this video. He'd been shocked and said he would investigate and the facts surrounding what had happened on the 18th of December 2020. And he was absolutely adamant, wasn't he, that there were no parties. And he said, I can understand how infuriating it would be to think that people who've been setting the rules have not been following the rules. He said, I mean, it is just extraordinary. He keeps saying that no COVID rules were broken, the guidance was not broken. He makes all these claims, but you know, we all lived through it. We knew what the rules were. I mean, certainly people who were still working in their offices, as my team were, we knew what the rules were. We weren't allowed to, they said some of these were leaving bashes. Well, I had a really long-standing member of my team who's been here since, day one at Talk, and he left. We weren't allowed to have a party. We had to stand 2 meters apart in our building to play a video of us all saying goodbye to him, so it was all socially distanced, because otherwise we'd have been in trouble, because we broke the rules. We'd have been sacked. I mean, and yet the rules were different in number 10.
I mean, yeah, this is it. This has always been the case. The moment those pictures emerged, and the moment we got the testimony of what these things were, it's always been very obvious that the rules were broken, and they were broken in a fairly inexcusable way, because of the fact that the rest of the country was living under some of the absolutely absurd rules that Boris Johnson's government had handed down. If he and his team kind of knew in their innermost hearts that this kind of stuff was fine and safe, they should have let the rest of us do it. So it has always been ridiculous. I think so. The more interesting thing about what Boris has said is not his claim that he didn't know. I think that's going to look fairly.
I mean, he didn't know about events he was at. But we do have this. I mean, we're showing the pictures now. These are the pictures that were in the Sue Gray report and also in the interim report from the Privileges Committee. And these pictures of Boris Johnson standing around what looks like the most rubbish party ever for his birthday, where they had sandwiches, the one that he got fined for and Rishi Sunak got fined for. We all know there were loads of raucous, drunken parties, people vomiting in the corner, wheelie suitcases full of booze being taken to number 10 from the co-op at the top of the road at Whitehall. I mean, it's fascinating. The only pictures that were ever shown to us were ones of the most staged event, which was clearly a work event. I mean, one we'd have the least issue with. Yet we know there were other events. No proper investigation into the party that we understand that his wife threw in her own flat. Therefore, no supposed workplace exemption. But it doesn't matter because there wasn't a workplace exemption. And this is the really frustrating thing: the complete rewriting of what went on in that time. And why do they think that so many of us will forget what the rules were when we had those imposed on us? But for me, the most telling thing, and I've argued this since this all emerged, is a lot of the papers say broke these rules at a time, and Harriet Harman, the chair of this committee at a time, when the fate could have been fatal, breaking all these rules. The reason why they had these parties was because they knew the rules were nonsense. They knew it wasn't necessary to save lives, for people to be young, healthy people to be kept away from each other, certainly not people who were working together all day. They broke the rules because they knew the rules were stupid, and yet they imposed the rules on us anyway. That's the bit that makes me so angry.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's going to be aggravating. That's the reason this was such a toxic story. This is Boris Johnson has got away with an awful lot because he had this amazing ability to do that. But fundamentally, these parties were going on at a time when people were waving goodbye to their elderly parents and grandparents through the windows of their houses because they couldn't go in and see them. People were having to stay away from people who were passing away. People were missing, their sort of nieces and nephews and grandchildren's life development. It was a vicious, awful time, and the contrast between that and what happened with these stories is quite remarkable. So Boris, it's already cost him his premiership. He's now basically trying to brazen it out, so for the sake of his remaining supporters, and maybe he hopes to stay on in the House of Commons. But the Tory party, Rishi Sunak has said he's not going to whip Tory MPs. I think it would be really dangerous for the Conservatives to intervene and try and save Boris at this point, because it risks turning a Boris Johnson scandal into a sort of broader, up-to-date Conservative scandal.
Yeah,
so if
exactly.
the committee find against him,
again, he infects everybody he touches. That's the thing. Really good to talk to you, Henry Hill, Deputy Editor of Conservative Home.